All right. Man, the older I get, the higher this thing has to get. Gosh. All right, just a real quick shout out. I wanted to mention this. Somebody came up to me right before the service. It might have been Dawn or somebody said, "Man, Robin Wooten's parents are here, the Taylors, and they're celebrating 60 years of marriage." I was like, so congratulations on that. That's inspirational to all of us, right? We can make it. All right. So let's go ahead. We're going to jump into Luke chapter 14. And we're going to read verses 1 through 14, but we're really going to focus on sort of the last 3 or 4 verses. But we'll read the first 10 or 11 just to give us a context and set the foundation for what we're going to be talking about this morning. So everybody there? We good? If you don't have a Bible, please, I'm so excited to look back and see that our study Bibles are in. You can see them on the ledge there. I'll be even more excited when I look out and see that they're gone and we can get more. It excites me so much to hand these Bibles out because they're just so helpful. I can't stress enough how crucial it is to have a Bible that you can understand, that you can take things away from, that can really be a help to you. Just looking at the words doesn't do anything. Did you know that? Like just staring at the words in the scriptures, reading the scripture doesn't have just this magical power. We have to be able to understand it. We have to allow it to really dig into our hearts and our minds to really transform us. So please grab one of those if you don't have a good study Bible and take that with you. If you are sort of like me, getting older and struggling to see things quite as clearly, we can get large print Bibles. You just have to let us know. They are a little more expensive than the other ones, so we don't order those in bulk, but we will order those special. And we would love to do that. So please, well, I think I've had 2 or 3 people already this morning say, "I can't read those little Bibles. I need bigger ones." But if you'd like one of those, let us know. We would love to order one of those and give that to you as a gift. All right, so let's look at Luke chapter 14. It says, "One Sabbath, when Jesus went to eat in the house of a prominent Pharisee, he was being carefully watched." Okay, we learn a lot right from that opening sentence. Jesus goes to eat with one of the religious leaders, which means that he was invited to come eat with them. Okay, and it says that he's being watched. So we kind of learn the motivation right away from the person who has invited Jesus and some of the other religious people that were invited to be part of this meal as well. They are watching Jesus carefully. It says, there in front of him was a man suffering from abnormal swelling of his body. Maybe your translation says he was suffering from dropsy. I had never heard that before. Dropsy, evidently this is a condition that comes from heart failure and liver failure and kidney failure, and I'm probably butchering this, and Catherine's going, "No, it's not." But so it's this swelling that comes in the body from these kinds of illnesses, and it is still extremely dangerous today when people are suffering from this, and back then it was virtually fatal. So this guy is in serious condition. Now, this is one of those times where I wish we were given a little more detail because I'm just so curious how this guy got to this meal. Okay? This was not the kind of person that the religious leaders of the time would have invited to a meal. Okay? This guy is obviously sick. He is suffering from swelling in his body. Okay? The Pharisees, the religious people, did not like to get near the sick, those who were suffering from illnesses. So I just wonder, how did this guy get here? How is he at this party next to Jesus? Now, as we begin to read a little bit more, I think we're given a few clues in this. I think this guy is here on purpose. I think he's been invited here by the Pharisees, these guys who are watching Jesus. I think they have sort of set Jesus up, and again, this is just my opinion. You can say you're crazy, but I think they have brought this guy here to see what Jesus would do. This is the Sabbath. Jesus has a reputation of healing on the Sabbath, which was not allowed. It wasn't permitted. Jesus is constantly breaking this rule, and I think they're watching Jesus, looking for a reason to accuse him of something, right? So I think they have brought this guy here to see what is Jesus going to do. They have put him right beside Jesus, okay? And let's see what Jesus does. Verse 3. It says, Jesus asked the Pharisees and experts in the law, "Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath or not?" I love that. Jesus is always smarter than everybody else. He knows what's in our mind. He knows what's in our heart. So right away he says, let me ask you a question. Is it okay to heal on this holy day? Is it okay to heal on the Sabbath? But they remained silent. Now I love this because Jesus is already healed on the Sabbath, right? Jesus isn't asking permission. He's not saying, hey, do you think this is okay to do right now? Jesus has already done it. Jesus is trying to dig into their hearts, right? Jesus is trying to dig into their minds, to reveal to everyone what they already know they're thinking. It says, but they remained silent. So taking hold of the man, I love that. Taking hold of the man. Don't you love the fact that Jesus takes a hold of us, right? He doesn't casually brush by us. He takes a hold of us. So taking hold of the man, he healed him and sent him on his way. I think this is where we get an idea of what's going on here, that this man is not here just by happenstance, that there was a setup here, because this man doesn't even continue to eat, right? He comes here, he is healed, and what does he do? He leaves. Jesus sends him on his way. It says, then he asked them, if one of you has a child or an ox that falls into a well on the Sabbath day, will you not immediately pull it out? Okay, Jesus once again is going to dig down deep to see what's in their heart, to reveal, make it plain to everyone what they're thinking, what's in their heart. He says, listen, let me ask you a question. If you have a problem with what I just did, healing this man on the Sabbath, why is it okay if you have a child that falls into a well, or even an animal of yours, an ox that falls into the well, why is it okay for you to save that animal or that child? What's the answer to that? Why is it okay? Because it was different when it had to do with them, right? When it's your child, then it's okay. When it's your ox, then it's okay. When it serves selfish means, it's okay. But when it has to do with someone else, you don't care, right? You don't have compassion on this man who is in serious, serious need of healing. Verse 7. When he noticed how the guests picked the places of honor at the table, he told them this parable. Jesus never misses an opportunity to teach a lesson. So he's going to highlight. He's saying, look, your selfishness is the issue here. Now let's demonstrate how the selfishness plays out. It says, when he noticed how the guests picked the places of honor at the table, he told them this parable. When someone invites you to a wedding feast, do not take the place of honor, for a person more distinguished than you may have been invited. Now, I love this because this is certainly going to cut them, right? This is a dig to demonstrate their selfishness, their piety, their self-righteousness, right? Jesus says, look, when you go into a wedding feast, don't pick the best seat at the table. What happens if someone more distinguished than you comes in? Certainly the Pharisees are going, more distinguished than me? Do you not know who I am? Do you not know who we are? We are it. We are the most distinguished people. Who's coming in that's more important than me? Okay, now I have a feeling this probably would land on us in sort of the same way. What if I started off the service like this and said, hey guys, this is what I want you to do. I would like everybody to leave the seat that you're in and move to the front, take the most uncomfortable seats, because somebody more important than you may come in. How many people, you don't have to raise your hand on this unless you want to, how many people will be like, more important than me? Ain't nobody more important. Why are they more important than me? You get all upset, right? What is Jesus getting at? That little bit of that selfishness in there. That's pride. Right? Who in the world would be more distinguished than me? Who would be more important than me? I deserve the best seat. Okay? Jesus is trying to get at them, get at the core of what's going on here. He says, if so, the host who invited both of you will come and say to you, give this person your seat. Then humiliated, you will have to take the least important place. But when you are invited, take the lowliest place, so that when your host comes, he will say to you, friend, move up to a better place. Then you will be honored in the presence of all other guests. Okay, there's some foreshadowing going on here. Jesus is giving this parable because he's getting ready to teach something. We're going to get into this next week a little bit, okay? And then he summarizes. He tells us what all this is about. Verse 11, for all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. Jesus says, look, here's the deal. Everyone who is selfish, who tries to elevate themselves, to exalt themselves, that thinks they're all that makes it all about them, you're going to be humbled. Okay? You're going to be humbled. Ultimately, we're going to talk about this next week, the great banquet feast. Those people will be humiliated. They will be brought low. Okay? But on the flip side of that, those who are willing to be selfless, who to put others before themselves, who are willing to say, it's not about me, it's about you. It's not that I'm important, it's about your importance. I want to lift you up. I want to elevate you. He says people that have that attitude, they will be exalted. Those who will humble themselves will be exalted. Verse 12. Then Jesus said to his host, and this is the section I want to spend some time on this morning. Then Jesus said to his host, when you give a luncheon or dinner, do not invite your friends, your brothers or sisters, your relatives, or your rich neighbors. If you do, they may invite you back, and so you will be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed. Although they cannot repay you, you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. Okay, what in the world is Jesus talking about here? What is his instruction? Not just to the Pharisees, but I believe to us today as well. What is he talking about here when he says, listen, when you throw a banquet, when you throw a feast, when you throw a party, when you have people come over to your house, he says, man, don't invite your friends. Don't invite your brothers and sisters, your family. Right? Don't invite just the rich people that you know, the influential people that you know, the affluent people that you know. Don't invite them. Now, how many people here think that is a hard, fast rule that Jesus is saying, never invite those people to your house? Do we think that's what Jesus is saying? Absolutely not. Jesus is using a way of speaking that was very common in this tradition, right? In the Semitic languages, the Hebrew, the Aramaic, the Arabic, it was very common to use sort of exaggeration to illustrate your point, okay? To make the point. I love that because what Jesus is doing, he's trying to make this big point. He wants to make sure that we don't miss it. He says, don't invite those people. It's sort of like when Jesus says, hey, you cannot follow me if you're not willing to hate your mother, father, brother, sister, all those people. How many people think Jesus literally means hate them? No, he's trying to make this point. He's exaggerating his point so that we get it. Okay, he says, don't invite those people. Don't invite the people that you're comfortable with. Don't invite the people that you have relationship with. Don't invite the people that are going to give something back to you. Okay? Now, we're going to talk about that a little bit more and dig in and really sort of examine ourselves to see if this is why we invite people. Is this the reason why we have people come to our house and we hang out with people? Okay, he says, but instead, when you give the banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind. Who's he talking about? Is he telling us specifically to go out and we need to go find crippled people to invite in? We need to go find blind people. So don't have any people that can see at your party. Invite all blind people. Is that what he's saying? No, that's not what he's talking about. He's talking about here the marginalized. He's talking about those people that are different than you, those people that are oppressed, those people that are strangers, those people who maybe aren't the most popular people. Okay, these would have been the people in society that would have been marginalized during that time. They've been pushed to the edges. He says, man, invite those people in. Why? Because they have nothing to give back. There are no selfish reasons to invite them. Okay? This is a selfless act of inviting them in and welcoming them in. Okay? So this morning I want to take the rest of our time and I want to talk about a word that I believe sums up and gets to the heart of what Jesus is talking about here. And that word is hospitality. Hospitality. When I say that word, what comes to mind? Do you think about hosting dinner parties and having people come to your house and maybe having a meal and you being a good host or a good hostess and having people come over? Is that what you think of when you think of hospitality? I think that's part of it, but I think there's so much more to it than just that. Okay, so let's dig in and find out what this word actually means. Hospitality, when we see this word time and time again in the scriptures, to be hospitable, to demonstrate hospitality, what is it that God is trying to get at? When we look at the word, a very technical definition, a very exact definition would be a lover of strangers. To love strangers. And I guess I got to be careful with how I say that. To have this love, this affection, this compassion for people that are not like you, that maybe you don't even know. Okay, that's what the word means. To love strangers. Okay? Now, I found this definition this week in a blog post that I read by a guy named John Revan. I don't know anything about this guy other than the fact that he is a deacon and a pastor, a deacon in South Carolina. He may be a nut, so please do not look him up and start following him and think that he has. I've read this one thing of his. He may be crazy, but this one thing I thought was really good, this article. This was the definition that he gave of hospitality. He said this: the welcoming and fellowshipping with believers and non-believers out of truth and love for Jesus Christ, so that they may see Christ more clearly. Love that definition. We're going to kind of break that apart a little bit today and use this as sort of the anchor for our studying this. I'm going to break this up into three different parts. The welcoming and fellowshipping with believers and non-believers. That's going to be one part we're going to talk about. Then we're going to talk about out of truth and love for Christ. And then the final part is so that they may see Christ more clearly. Okay? So the first part, welcoming and people in and fellowshipping with people that are believers, non-believers, strangers, people that we know, with a strong emphasis on the strangers part, the people that are not like us, that we don't have a relationship with. Why is this so important to God? Why is it so important to him that we fellowship with people? Why is it so important that we welcome in people? All right, we see Matthew 22:37 through 40. Jesus is asked this question by one of the religious leaders during the time. He comes to Jesus and says, Jesus, what's the most important commandment? If there's one thing that I have to know, what would it be? Right? What is it? What's the one commandment that I have to make sure that I follow? And Jesus says this. He replies, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. The first and greatest commandment. Jesus could have stopped there, and I think the guy would have been happy and been like, I knew it, nailed it. I'm knocking that out of the park, man. I'm loving the Lord. I'm following the rules. I'm doing all the stuff that I need to do. I think we probably would feel pretty comfortable with that. But that isn't where Jesus stops. He continues. He says the word and. It says, and the second is like it. It goes right along with it. You can't separate the two. These two things go together all the time. They cannot be separated at all. It says, and the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. So Jesus says, look, these two things go together. You asked me about the one commandment. I can't give you one. I've got to give you two because they're inseparable. It says you got to love the Lord with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. You got to love your neighbor as yourself. I believe that hospitality is at the intersection of loving God and loving people. Okay? Hospitality is where these two things meet. Okay? And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. Hebrews 13:2 says this. It says, do not forget to show hospitality to strangers. Okay? I want us to read this as a command. Do not forget to do this. All right? This is essential. This is important. You've got to show hospitality to strangers. You've got to show this love and affection for strangers, for foreigners, for aliens. This is the way that the word is described. For people that you're not familiar with, you're not even comfortable with, even your enemies. Okay? We read in Luke chapter 10 in the story of the Good Samaritan, Jesus defines who our neighbor is. So when Jesus says, love your neighbor, they say, well, who's my neighbor? Who's our neighbor? Everyone. The Good Samaritan teaches us that everyone we encounter, everyone we come in contact with is our neighbor. There's somebody that we should love, that we should show affection for, that we should have compassion for, that we should invest in, that we should welcome and have fellowship with. Okay? It says, do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by so doing, some people have shown hospitality to angels without knowing it. Okay, now I love this. See the connection here. It's not just that you're showing hospitality to someone, to a stranger, but you're also showing hospitality to God. Okay? He says some people have actually entertained, have shown hospitality to angels and not even realized it. Okay? I was going to read all these different examples in the Old Testament, but instead I'll just tell you where they're found. Genesis 18, if you want to look that up. Abraham shows hospitality to angels. Genesis 19, Lot shows hospitality to angels. Judges 6, Gideon does. Judges 13, Manoah, Samson's father, does. These are all situations in which these people entertain these angels, and in a lot of these situations didn't even realize it. They thought they were just showing hospitality to someone that they didn't know. Okay, in the Jewish culture, hospitality was unbelievably important. Okay, it was disrespectful to not bring in a stranger, someone in need. Okay, so these men were just bringing in these people that they thought were strangers, and in fact, they turned to be angels. They weren't just showing hospitality to people, they were showing hospitality to God. Right? We see this again, not just in the Old Testament, we see it in the New Testament as well. A great example of this is after Jesus has been crucified, raised from the dead, he's resurrected, and that same day, he comes along two men that are walking from Jerusalem on a road to Emmaus, and they're having a conversation about all the things that are going on. Jesus comes up beside them, starts engaging in the conversation, right? They don't recognize him. They don't know it's Jesus. They just start talking about all the things that had transpired that day. And you know what happens in the story. They continue on. They get to Emmaus. They get to where they're going. And the scripture says that Jesus acted as though he was going to go further. He was going to leave them, right? And what do these two men do? They say, no, don't leave. Stay here. They show hospitality. Stay with us. Have conversation with us. Come in and eat with us. And then what happens? In the midst of this conversation, Jesus is revealed to them. Okay? They showed hospitality. They thought they were showing hospitality just to a stranger, but in fact, it was Jesus. Okay? Now, the thing that I really like about all these examples is not only does it open the door that, hey, we may be showing hospitality to God himself when we show hospitality to someone, Jesus is going to take it a step further and say not only is it just an opportunity or a chance that you may be doing that, you are doing that. You're guaranteed to be doing that. Let's look at Matthew 25, 34 through 40. Jesus is going to make it even more clear that hospitality isn't just about other people. It's about God. All right? These two things intersect. Our love for God and our love for people intersect when we show hospitality, when we welcome people in and have fellowship with them. Starting with verse 34, Jesus is telling a story. Once again, he's using an illustration to tell us about the kingdom of God, and he's talking about when he comes back for the second time, when he comes to judge the earth, and everyone will be separated, right? And he'll put the sheep on the right, and he'll put the goats on the left. The people that did certain things to follow him, to get into the kingdom, will be on one side, and the people who didn't will be on the other. And this is what he says. This is how he separates them. It says, then the king will say to those on his right, come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. It says, I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison or go to visit you? The king will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you what? You did it for me. You did it to me. All right? And then he's going to go on the other side and he's going to say, you guys, the goats, these people on this side, man, I was all of these things and you did none of them for me. Okay? Jesus says when we do these things for other people, when we show hospitality to other people, we're not just showing it to them, we're showing it to God. Okay, so you can understand why this is so important. Why is hospitality so important to God? Because this is a reflection of our relationship with Him. Okay? These two things are intimately connected. Look at Matthew 10:42. It says, and if anyone gives even a cup of water, cold water to one of these little ones who is my disciple, truly I tell you, that person will certainly not lose their reward. Okay, you see the connection here? When you give a cup of cold water to someone else, it's like you're giving a cup of cold water to who? To Jesus. Okay? Now listen to this life application commentary. This is the same book that's laying on the back, the same Bible that I would love to give to you. This is the kind of insight you will get in that book. That's a free commercial. This is what it says. Life Application Study Bible Commentary on Matthew 10, verse 42. So if you open up that study Bible, you go down to the bottom, it's going to have a note that says Matthew 10, 42, and this is what it says. How much we love God can be measured by how well we treat others. Does that bother anybody else? Does that scare anybody else? Right? We can be doing all the religious stuff, think we're following all the rules, but God's going to look and say, let me first check and see how you treated other people. Because I can tell how much you love me by how much you love them. These things are intimately connected. So Jesus' example of giving a cup of cold water to a thirsty child is a good model of unselfish service. Remember, at the heart of hospitality is unselfishness. Okay? It's not about you, it's about other people. It says a child usually can't or won't return a favor. Do we know that to be true? Right? When a little child comes up and asks you for something, you're not looking for them to return the favor. It's completely unselfish. I love when the kids come running to my office and they're like, Pastor Jason, you got a lollipop, you got candy, whatever. I love that. I love to give it to them. I'm not sitting there looking, going, well, gosh, you're going to repay me? You're going to bring me back some candy? What are you going to do? Right? It's a selfless act, and we've all done it with our children and other people's children. We just give it away. We don't expect anything in return. This is hospitality. Okay? It says a child usually can or won't return a favor. God notices every good deed we do or don't do as if He were the one receiving it. Okay? What a mind shift. Does that impact you the same way that's impacting me, to think that every single person we encounter, however I treat them, is the same way that I'm treating Jesus? Man, that's hard for me. Because can I tell you, when I'm in traffic and I'm acting a fool to think that Jesus could be driving, I wouldn't do that, right? Would you? Have you ever acted like a crazy person and pulled up beside somebody and realized somebody that you knew? Man, I do that all the time. I'm tailgating people for miles. And then I pull up beside them and I'm like, oh. Like I was just trying to get your attention, right? If I knew that was somebody that I knew, I would have done that. I wouldn't have acted like that. If that was Jesus, I certainly wouldn't have acted like that. What this verse is saying is you need to think, that's Jesus. You're doing it to Him. When you do it to other people, you're doing it to Him. When you're kind and generous to other people, man, you're being kind and generous to God. When you're being rude and nasty to other people, you're being rude and nasty to God. Man, how does that change your interaction? Every interaction you're going to have for the rest of the day. Every person you run into, every waitress that comes to your table, every person you see on the street, all of a sudden, what if you looked at them as that's Jesus? I want to do to them what I would do to Jesus. It changes everything. Hebrews 6:10 says, God is not unjust. He will not forget your work and the love you have shown Him as you have helped his people and continue to help him. Again, we have this connection. God is just. He's going to reward those who treat his son the way that they should. Right? But here's the flip side of it. James 2, 1 through 9. It says, my brothers and sisters, believers in our glorious Lord Jesus Christ, must not show favoritism. Must not show favoritism. This word favoritism is a cool Greek word. It means an acceptor of a face. That's literally what it means, an acceptor of a face. It is to make a decision about someone based on what you see, based on what you see externally, right? So when we begin to make decisions on how we're going to interact with someone based on what they look like, what they can contribute, whether we're comfortable with them or not, we are showing favoritism, okay? He says we must not do that. Not that we shouldn't, we must not. We cannot do that. He says, suppose a man comes into your meeting wearing a gold ring and fine clothes, and a poor man in filthy old clothes also comes in. If you show special attention to the man wearing fine clothes and say, here's a good seat for you, but say to the poor man, you stand there or sit on the floor by my feet, have you not discriminated among yourselves and become judges with evil thoughts? Now, I read that and I thought, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that in church. Like someone walks in, I wouldn't look at them and say, oh man, they got some money. Let's let them get a good seat. I wouldn't do that. And then I got thinking, I was like, crap, I do that. Not in that exact way, but I remember Principal Evans came several weeks ago and sat back in the back. Right? And as soon as he came in, I went, oh Lord, please let the worship be good today. Man, I really hope it's good today. I hope he's impressed with that. Why am I not doing that with everybody? Why is he special? Right? That's me showing favoritism. Right? I'm choosing something based on his appearance, not looking on the inside and seeing that every single person in here has unbelievable value to God. Equal value. God doesn't look at any one of them and go, yeah, he's special. She's a bum. He's not doing that. We're all valuable. I should be holding everybody in equal regard. Right? Is that the way that we think? Let's be honest. Are there people that walk through those doors that you go, please don't sit next to me? You ever do that? I mean, seriously, let's be real. Let's be honest. Are there people that walk through those doors that you go, hey? And there's other people that you go, oh, God, over there. This is discrimination, right? This is favoritism. This is making a judgment about somebody, not about their intrinsic value, but by things that we like or dislike about them. This is favoritism. We can't do this. James is saying you cannot do that. It says, listen, my dear brothers and sisters, has not God chosen those who are poor in the eyes of the world to be rich in faith and to inherit the kingdom he promised those who love him? Isn't this what the Bible says time and time again? I'm going to choose the weak among you. I'm going to use the frail among you. I'm going to use the foolish among you. Why? So that I get the glory. Too many times I'm putting together a team. I want all the smart people. I want all the talented people. Right? That's how I pick my team. God's going, no, that's not how I pick my team. And see, here's the crazy part about it. It's going to get into the second part of that definition of our motivation behind it. When God looked at you, did he pick you because you were the best and the brightest? When you walk through the doors, did God go, hey, here's the crazy thing. Yes, he did, but not because you're special, not because of your skill, not because of your ability, not because you're so smart, not because you're so good looking, not because you smelled so good. He didn't pick any of those reasons. He says, because I love you. I see intrinsic value in you. You're made in my image, every single one of us. Okay? He says, but you have dishonored the poor. Is it not the rich who are exploiting you? Are they not the ones who are dragging you into court? We won't get into that today. Are they not the ones who are blaspheming the noble name of him to whom you belong? If you really keep the royal law found in Scripture, love your neighbor as yourself, you are doing right. God won't forget that. He's not going to be unjust. God is going to reward those who keep that law, that commandment. But if you show favoritism, you sin and are convicted by the law as lawbreakers. Do we get the seriousness of this? This is serious. Hospitality is serious. God takes it serious. Why? Because it's not just being nice and kind to someone else. It is demonstrating your love and affection for God. Okay? Matthew 7:12. Familiar passage, the golden rule. So in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you. For this sums up the law and the prophets. All right, now, that's a great motivation. We're taught that really early on, aren't we? As little kids, we tell our children that, hey, do to other people what you would want them to do to you. That's great motivation for how you interact with other people, right? Everything you do, everything that you say with someone else, do it and say it in a way that you would want them to do it and say it to you. Now, I would say that Jesus elevates this. Okay, so when we go back to our definition of hospitality, the welcoming and fellowshipping with believers and non-believers out of truth and love for Jesus Christ. All right, so how do we treat other people? We treat other people not just how we would want them to treat us, but we treat them how we have been treated. Right? Listen to Leviticus 19, 33 and 34. So this is going all the way back to the Old Testament. It says, when a foreigner resides among you, and that word foreigner means a newcomer, a stranger, someone who is not, the definition literally means a newcomer lacking inherited rights. So if you're talking about a foreigner, an alien, someone who doesn't have the same rights as a citizen as you, someone who's on the outside, someone who doesn't have things in common with you, it says, man, when this kind of person is living amongst you, he says, in your land, do not mistreat them. The foreigner residing among you must be treated as your native born. All right, so he's telling us how we should treat other people. We should treat other people just like we would people that are like us, that look like us, that we're comfortable with, that we like. All of these things. We need to treat people the same. We need to love them just like we love these other people. And now he's going to tell us what our motivation is. Why do we do that? How can we do that? He says, love them as yourself, for you were foreigners in Egypt. He says you should be able to love people and not mistreat them. You should be able to show them with this respect. You should be able to show them this hospitality. Why? Because that's what was shown to you. You should know what it's like to be on the outside. Can anybody relate to that? Anybody relate to what it's like to be on the outside of God's will, outside of God's plan, outside of God's body? Do you remember when you were the one that was a foreigner? You were the one that was a stranger? And what did God do? He brought you in. Not because you deserved it, not because you cleaned up your act. He brought you in because he loved you. It was out of his grace that he brought you in. We all should have that experience. We all should know what it feels like, right? We all should be able to relate to someone else and say, man, I want to do for them what God did for me. So when someone comes in, when we go, oh, man, I hope they don't sit near me. Is that what God did for you? No, right? We should love other people because we've been loved. This is the way Jesus said it. John 13:34. He says, a new command I give you, love one another. He says, as I have loved you, so you must love one another. Okay, so it's not even just, man, treat other people the way that you would want to be treated. It's treat other people the way that you have been treated. So in those situations where maybe we don't necessarily feel like showing hospitality, where we find it really difficult, I would encourage you, go back to your relationship with Jesus. How did he show you love? How did he show you affection? Do you remember when you felt lost, when you felt alone, when you felt isolated, and he brought you in and gave you a home and gave you a family? Right? This is how we find the motivation to love other people, out of what we've already been shown. Okay? Let's go back to this guy, John Revan again. This is another quote in an article. He says, so when someone in the first century church shared a meal or took someone into their home, they weren't just offering a helping hand, but they were sharing life. Now, I don't know what he meant to say when he meant sharing life. Maybe he just meant you're actually sharing life with them, you're doing things with them, you're spending time with them. But I love the fact that the word life in the scriptures means something different. Who is the source of life? Jesus, right? Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. So all of a sudden, that quote changed in its power for me. When he says, you're not just offering a helping hand, but they were sharing life. They were sharing Jesus with people. So when the early church was demonstrating this hospitality, they were showing Jesus. They were presenting Jesus. They were casting seeds. We talked about this last week, right? I said, how many people can do big things for God? And almost everybody raised their hand. And I said, you can do something really big for God by doing something that seemingly seems really small. Cast a seed. Show some kindness. Show compassion. Show hospitality. Welcome people in. Fellowship with people. Show love for people that aren't like you. Okay? In this way, we are sharing life. We are sharing Christ. We are casting seed. We're doing the last part of that definition. We're welcoming and fellowshipping with believers and non-believers out of the truth and love for Jesus Christ so that they may see Christ more clearly. How many people want to see other people see Jesus clearly? You know how we're going to do that? By drawing them close to us. Okay? It's not just pointing it out, saying, man, you'll get to know Jesus if you go over there, do this thing, get involved in this activity over here. No. We don't send people to go find Jesus. We invite people to come in to see Jesus. Okay, this is at the core of hospitality. So how do we do that? Let's get practical right in the last couple of minutes before we close. How do we do that? There's probably some people in here right now that are going, man, I don't know about this hospitality thing. I know what you're saying, but I don't feel comfortable inviting people over to my house. I'm not really a social butterfly. I'm not really a host or hostess. Listen, there's lots of ways that you can show hospitality, because hospitality isn't just inviting people to your home. Is that a big part of it? Sure. Sharing a meal, is that all hospitality is? No, it's a big part of it, but it's not everything. I mean, I will say this. If you look at Scripture, how many awesome, miraculous things took place around a meal? Meals provide awesome opportunities for these things. Why? Because I don't know too many people that don't like to eat. Right? You may say, look, I don't know how to strike up conversation. I don't know what we would talk about. I may not have anything in common with that person. Yeah, you got something in common with them. You both like to put stuff in your mouth. Get together and do that. Right? When I don't know what to say, you want another roll? Right? I think that's a huge reason why things happen around a meal, because it's such a common thing. It brings us together and brings us into this unity in something that we all enjoy to do, that we all like to do. So these are great opportunities. Surely sharing a meal is a great way to do it, but it's not the only way to show hospitality. Because see, here's the thing. Hospitality isn't just an action. It's also an emotion. It's a way of life. It's a way of thinking. 1 Peter 4, 8 through 11 says this. Peter says, above all, love each other deeply, because love covers over a multitude of sins. Offer hospitality to one another without grumbling. Okay, so there's an attitude of hospitality. To be hospitable means that you have a concern and a care for other people. You want to draw people in close to see Jesus. Okay? When you look at the list, and I always thought this was funny, when you look at the list for leadership in Titus and in 1 Timothy, where it's talking about, hey, if you want to be an elder, you need to be this kind of person. On both lists, it says to be hospitable. Well, what does that mean? Is he talking about in order to be an elder or a deacon in the church, you got to invite people to your house? Is that what it's saying? No, it's saying you should have this concern for other people. You should have this affection and this love for other people. If you don't, that's a problem. That's a problem. It says, offer hospitality to one another without grumbling. Each of you should use whatever gift, and I love this, each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. If anyone speaks, they should do it as one who speaks the very words of God. If anyone serves, they should do so with the strength God provides, so that in all things God may be praised through Jesus Christ. To him be the glory and the power forever and ever. Amen. What is the goal? To bring people in to see Jesus. Well, how are we going to get them to see Jesus? Use whatever gift God has given you. Right? Some of you are great at hospitality, right? That is a spiritual gift. The Bible tells us that there are certain people that are given this extra endowment of hospitality. Man, you just love to entertain people. You love to have people come to your house. You are fantastic at that. If that's you, use that gift. There are other people who would say, I'm not much on having people over to my house. I just feel really uncomfortable. I don't know. Well, what are you gifted at? Some of you are amazing cooks, right? You're great bakers. Fix something and take it to someone. That's a way of showing hospitality. They don't have to come necessarily to your house. Hospitality, first and foremost, is a mindset. It is a concern for other people. It is an engagement of other people. How can you engage other people? If you're a good cook, man, take something to eat to someone. I don't know too many people. You show up at their door with cookies that are going to be like, no thanks. That's going to tear down some walls right there, right, just to show up. How about somebody that would say, man, I'm great at... I'm good at flowers and being a florist or whatever. I can grow anything. We'll grow something and take it to somebody. Show up with a potted plant. What a great way to introduce yourself and start to engage someone, right? Some of you are great writers. Write a note, write a letter, write a card. Drop it off at your neighbor's house. Put it in the mailbox. Hey, been thinking about you. Just want to encourage, whatever. The thing is, do whatever you're good at. Use it to draw people in, to help them see Jesus Christ, the love of Jesus. That's all we have to do, all right? And here's the thing, use that gift to reach out to people that you wouldn't ordinarily reach out to the people that are strangers. I would encourage you, who are the people on your job that you could reach out to, that you would say, man, I don't know them. They kind of are. They're like strangers. I don't know anything about them. Engage them, right? How can you do that? I don't know. Find a way. What are you good at? You like sports? Invite them to a game. Find some way to engage them. Are there people in your family that you're not close to, that you would look at and say, man, I just barely know them? Engage them. This is hospitality, okay? Who are the people that are in this church right now that you can look across and say, man, I don't know them. I'm going to get to know them. I mean, we've got people in here right now, and I won't ask you to raise your hands, but we got people in here right now that would love to get a phone call from somebody saying, hey, let's go out to lunch. They would love it. There are people that I know come in here week after week after week that are not connected with people. They're not. I see them come in, they take their kids upstairs, drop them off, they come back in, they sit down in the seat, and maybe somebody says hi and speaks to them or whatever, but they've never been asked to anybody's house. They've never been asked to go out to Denny's to get something to eat. They've never been engaged in that way. Who could you ask to do that? And you say, well, I don't know anybody. That's the point. That's the point. Hospitality says you don't have to know anybody. The thing is to look over and go, I don't know that dude. I don't want to point but I don't know that person. Let me engage them. Let me go over to them. Let me introduce and just tell them what my name is. Let me ask them out for a cup of coffee. You know, these are all things that we can do to engage other people and show hospitality. Are we doing it? Are we being hospitable? It's not an option. It's a command. We're told to do it, right? This is the way that we bring people in to see Jesus. This is where we begin to that intersection of loving other people and loving God. I want to end with this quote. I wish I knew where it came from. I can't give them credit, so just write my name by it when you write it down. Hospitality takes strangers and makes them neighbors, and takes neighbors and makes them family. I love that. How simple is that? Hospitality takes strangers and makes them neighbors, takes neighbors and makes them family. You see the point? The point is to take people that are far away from God, maybe even far away from you, that are different than you, and to draw them into an intimate relationship, to draw them into being brothers and sisters in Christ. That's our goal. Do we have a concern for other people? Do we have a desire to see people come into relationship with Jesus? If we do, hospitality is a spectacular way to help people to come into a relationship with God. I want to challenge you. Find someone to be hospitable to. I don't think you have to try very hard. I really don't. I don't think it's hard to identify people. Again, look around. Who's somebody that you don't know very well? Who's somebody that you see kind of sitting by themselves? You say, well, man, that's really hard for me to approach them. Would you want somebody to approach you? Did Jesus do that? It's part of your testimony. I hear people all the time talk about certain people in this church. I won't say who they are, but they go, man, that person just made me feel so welcome. When I first came to the church, I just felt like I was at home because they welcomed me so well. Okay, well then pass it on. Do the same thing for someone else. Reach out to someone else. Make them feel at home. When you see a stranger walk in the door, somebody you've never seen before, I would love to see us be a congregation that just showers people with affection, that just showers people with concern, that they walk in and they say, man, I don't know about these people, but I'll tell you one thing, they're awful friendly. They have this concern for me. They made me feel right at home, you know, and then go an extra step. Ask them out to lunch. Ask them out for a cup of coffee. You know, what's the worst thing they could say? No? What have you lost? But think about what you could gain. Let's pray. Father, I know that this is an extremely challenging message for some people. I know it is for me. I tend to be an introvert. I know there's a lot of other people that are introverts that say, man, the idea of just approaching someone that I don't know and saying hi scares me to death. And now you would want me to maybe ask them out to lunch or to get a cup of coffee. That I understand that is so intimidating for so many people. But Lord, I pray that you would instill in us the boldness that you have promised. Lord, you said that you haven't given us a spirit of fear. You've given us one of power, of boldness. So I pray for that this morning, that you would just fill each and every one of us with boldness, that we would take advantage of every opportunity that you give us to show hospitality to someone. There are people all around us, everywhere we go, Lord, in this very building, sitting right in this place. There are opportunities to show hospitality. There are opportunities to help engage other people, to draw them into the kingdom, to help them see you more clearly. So I pray that we would, again, be filled with boldness, that we would do it, that we would put ourselves out there, that we would remember how you drew us in, how other people invested in us, And I pray that that serves as our motivation, Lord, to invest in someone else, to take the chance. So we have everything to gain and nothing to lose. I don't know. There's so many people, Lord, that would see you so much more clearly if other people would invest in them. So help us to do that. Help us to be a congregation that is just unbelievably hospitable, Lord, that we have this unbelievable concern for other people, that we have this burning desire to see people go from being strangers to family. When we do that, Lord, I know we're going to see unbelievable results. I can't imagine how you're going to grow, not just this church, but grow your kingdom when your people begin to do that. Help us to see the importance of hospitality, Lord, that it's such a beautiful opportunity to show people your love. So help us to do it, Lord, in every way. We love you and we thank you for these things.